Good afternoon. My name's Kevin Graham, and today, as usual on a Thursday, a Celtic State of Mind Towers here. We're joined by John Paul Mason. We may as well just go into it. Is that an Anderlecht
Aye,
top, or is it an Anderlecht top? It is an
It's an
Anderlecht top. It's
Anderlecht
behind you. Aye.
probably from about 1990. I'm going to say 1996, maybe 97. Bought from the inn shops in Falkirk.
Remember it well.
There used to be like that wee shop where you could get Fitbit tops, like usually the previous seasons, and I think I bought it just because it was purple, not because I had any affinity with Anderlecht. But it's up today because out of sheer pettiness, they were booing Kasper Schmeichel last night because he was ex-Anderlecht, and then I looked it up and found out that they are indeed obviously rivals from the same city. So, and I didn't really like them that much last night, to be honest. They weren't. Well, there was no applauding of any players of their on their side going off the park. Put it that way. They were a good side, but I thought they were a bit showboaty in the first 25-30 minutes. They were like trying to show off, obviously, and they were obviously a good team. But I think we showed in the second half that they're not as good as they thought they were in that first half.
Deservedly, I think they were the better team in the first half. We may as well go right in and speak about it, because it was a massive night again at Celtic Park last night with Club Brugge, or Brugge, as the commentator I was listening to watching it last night called him, Brugge. I think he was trying to be Marky Smith, but we extending the last vowel there.
That's a niche reference there, Kev.
Right, let's get this on the table. What is your favourite Fall album before we talk about football?
By the way, I'm a huge fan. I'm not going to be one of these people that says, "Oh, I'm a big Fall fan." I'm not. I never saw them live. I've never really. I do like the song Edinburgh Man.
Brilliant song.
Just because I read into it and found out that he'd lived in Edinburgh for a while and he actually properly fell in love with Edinburgh. I mean, I lived there for 12 years and there was a lot about it I didn't like, but there's a lot that I did as well. And that song kind of encapsulates.
Early, if you want a wee jump in point for me, I'm early 90s Fall. When he was in Edinburgh, Code Selfish and Infotainment Scan, those albums round about then. I think that's a good start off. But right, let's talk about the Champions League. I thought we started off badly, but it's turned out to be an utterly fantastic point at the end of it. A very, very poor first half. They looked physical, they looked athletic, they played through us quite easily. But the resilience of the side was great. As soon as we lost the goal, and the way that we lost the goal, my worry right away was we need to get into half-time, no 2 or 3-0 down here, because that's happened plenty of times in Europe. We had that wee impromptu huddle, which seemed to settle us down a little bit. We get into half-time, 1-0 down. Brendan makes a couple of tactical changes. We play better in the second half. We deserve. I don't think we've done enough to win the game, but my God, it was a fantastic point at the end of the night, and I'll take it every day of the week.
Definitely, like I said to you just before we came on air, there was a kind of weird level of expectation going into the game last night, where people were thinking, "All right, well, this is an unfancied club. We beat Leipzig in the last game. This should be something we should probably dispatch handily." But like, when you look, they beat Aston Villa, and I know anybody that watched that game, I haven't seen the full game, but obviously people said that they were maybe fortunate to win that game. It doesn't matter; they still won it. They still beat Aston Villa, who are riding high.
I watched the Aston Villa game, and they were exactly the same as what they were last night. They are very good up to a point, but what stops them being a top like us? They're in the middle. They're not middle tranche of clubs in the Champions League like us. But what stops them making that jump is in the final third. They are quite. They're not as clinical as the fight in the final third as some of the bigger teams. But also watched the majority of the game when they were in Milan, and they were the better team in Milan for long periods in that game. So they know how to play. They got to a semi-final of a European competition last season. Doesn't matter what you think what the Conference League is. And the year before that, they also got to the last 8 of the Champions League. They're a team that know what they're doing in Europe. And just because we're looking at these fixtures, and you're looking at the teams at what I call Europa League level sides, and we've got one next in Zagreb. You look at Bruges, you look at Young Boys, you looked at Bruges, go that. If we're serious in this competition, then we should be looking to win that at home, right? But sometimes football doesn't work like that. Football doesn't. Sometimes you've got to adapt to the game in front of you. And I thought, like you, there was a wee bit of arrogance, especially by the younger guys, going, we need to win this game. We should be winning this game. We'll get 10 points. We're going to qualify. Football doesn't win like that. Doesn't work like that, JP. And I'm really glad I'm really glad how the team adapted last night. We didn't adapt in Dortmund, but we've adapted. We adapted in Bergamo. We adapted against Leipzig, and once again, we adapted last night to the game that was in front of us.
Well, the thing I remember about the Dortmund game, I watched it in the Brazen Head, and Neil Lennon was the co-commentator, and the thing that he kept saying throughout the first half was, we need to stop the bleeding, because it was absolutely hemorrhaging in that first half against Dortmund, because they are clinical up top, unlike Bruges. And if we'd have been facing a Dortmund last night at home, or a similar side, and we'd played like that, they might have taken 2-3 off us in that first half when we weren't at the races.
I think even if you look back at it, I think Leipzig created more chances against us than what Brugge done last night.
Yeah. And I did watch Paul from Celtic Fans TV did an interview with a Bruges fan who, when he asked him about if there was any weaknesses that Celtic could exploit or any weaknesses in the side, they did say up top they were not as good as maybe they have been in the past, and I think they're missing a striker at the moment who's injured, who, thank God, he wasn't playing last night, because he might have made that first half worse for us last night. The wee guy that was playing up front, whose name escapes me, is it Jutla? I can't.
Aye.
Something like that. He was a nuisance, but he didn't strike fear into me in the same way that you've had other like strikers in these European sides that you've never heard of, and then suddenly they come alive against us, and then everybody starts talking about them, and then they get a move for 50 million somewhere. See Nkunku, see your man from Shakhtar that went to Chelsea, whose name escapes me now. Mudryk, yeah. But there wasn't anybody like that. You obviously had the captain in the middle of the park, who's, I think they're kind of Scott Brown, been there for 10 years. And you could see straight away that he was that kind of commanding presence. But he kind of reminded me a bit of Matic, Nemanja Matic. He had that kind of physique about him, and maybe a bit of the way that he passed as well. But no, I think I said to my pals that sit in front of me, I was like, we just need to get to half-time and not concede anymore. And then at half-time, hopefully we can address the issues like he did on Saturday at Tynecastle, where he basically said the Hearts press was different to what they expected, so had to make some adjustments. And you hope that was going to be the case last night, and thank God it was. A completely uncharacteristic own goal from Carter Vickers. We've seen that sort of play happen a lot in the last few years in terms of the way we've been playing, and that own goal could have come at some point beforehand. It's just unfortunate that it came. It could have come in a home game against Motherwell or something like that if they actually pressed really hard for a minute or two, because we do obviously like to pass it around. But so we've seen instances like that where it's been a bit shaky and everyone gets a bit nervous. But last night we got punished for it because Schmeichel was obviously waiting for the pass from Kuhn, and then it became a pass from Carter Vickers, which he wasn't there for. And I find it hilarious that there's certain accounts on Twitter, which I will be leaving in the fullness of time. I think it's become an absolute bin fire, and I'm not really interested in a lot of the stuff that I see on it. But I saw a few folk last night from the other side of the city having a laugh at that, and it's like, well, if that's what you've got to amuse yourselves at this point in time, then fill your boots, because I mean, there's a lot more to laugh at in their world than us scoring our own goal in Champions League. I mean, when was the last time they even played in the Champions League? I mean, I say won or got a point in the Champions League. We obviously know what happened to them a couple of years ago.
That's one of the reasons you should come over and join us, as ELO said on Mr. Blue Sky.
I know, I'm there. I'm there already, man. I'm there already.
It is. I mean, if that's the level that they've got to, it's great. It was a hilarious own goal. I would have been just the same as I killed myself laughing at Tyrone Mings picking up the ball in the last game against them, last game against Brugge. Sometimes the football gods seem to go for teams, and that's two in their last two Champions League games. There's two big massive errors have put them in front in games. Sometimes that just happens, and sometimes I didn't blame you. You can actually see what Schmeichel's trying to do. Schmeichel's going to give Kuhn the ball.
Yeah.
Weren't they aggressive enough trying to get the ball out? Weren't they aggressive enough with the ball? We weren't aggressive enough without the ball. Carter Vickers, when he gets the ball, he expects Schmeichel to be there. It's muscle memory. It's what they train for. That's why nobody's getting pulled up for it. That's why Cameron Carter Vickers is not getting hung out to dry by any of the coaching staff or anything like that, because, as they say, he plays that ball a million times. Schmeichel's there. Interesting to hear Rodgers saying that the positioning was all wrong when the ball was played out, and that's what caused the problem. It wasn't the ball. The fact is we weren't in position, we weren't in shape quick enough. Interesting to hear him. Interesting to hear the manager actually say that. I think Carter Vickers, he wasn't great last night, but he didn't hide. He went on. You look at what's the right back, the full back for Man City, Guardiola. He's had a terrible couple of weeks, and you watch him against Feyenoord, makes one mistake, then right away makes a second mistake, brings Feyenoord back into the game. Carter Vickers never bowed to that. He actually got his head back in the game. Wasn't he the best? But a lot of the players weren't at their best, but I think he was reliable, and I've got nothing against the big man, and I'm certainly not going to hold that own goal against him. Funnily enough, it's not the worst own goal I've ever seen Celtic score in Europe.
Chaduri.
I was in Rennes that night when he scored that. That is one of that was worse.
Right, and you know what's worse about that is he laughed about it. I've never forgotten the fact that he was laughing about that. There was no laughing for Carter Vickers last night. He looked completely distraught, as you would expect. But I mean, that's why Chaduri didn't become an established Celtic player, and Carter Vickers has, because there was nothing funny about that. There's certainly nothing funny about watching them celebrate it as if they'd scored a top bin free kick right in front of me as well, which is another reason why that Anderlecht top's up there. Just if one person happens to watch this and gets riled by the fact that there's an Anderlecht top there, then job done for me as far as I'm concerned. Not sure how much the needle is between the two clubs, but it's there anyway. So
I must admit, there's a comment in that says about their fans, and one thing I've noticed about when I went to watch Celtic against Anderlecht, there seems to be a get the badging element of Belgian supporters who seem to mimic Football Factory and stuff like that, Green Street and stuff like that. It seems to be a thing.
And saying that, we when we were there for the game, the only time I've ever seen Celtic win away from home in the Champions League, I'm not counting Cumbrian Town. I mean, that was a qualifier, and it didn't even feel like I was in a foreign climes. I was in Cardiff.
I met my wife at that game.
Did you?
Aye, true story.
But when we beat Anderlecht 3-0, me and my mate Michael were in the home end. It's a long story how I got the ticket, but it was a friend of a friend who played five-a-sides with a lawyer who represented Anderlecht, and it was a last throw of the dice. I knew that my mate Murdo had worked in Brussels, so I phoned him maybe a week before the game. I was like, anything you can do, like home end, anything. And then whilst we were on the Eurostar about to go through the tunnel, I got a call from him, and he was like, "You still looking for tickets? I think I've got you two." And basically, the lawyer, had bought 2 tickets for his mates because they'd been like, "Oh, get us Champions League games tickets." And then when he said to them it was for the Celtic game, they were like, "Oh, no, we wanted to see Anderlecht against whoever else we were playing in that." Was it Bayern Munich?
Aye.
And Paris Saint-Germain, because it wasn't the glamour ties. And he was like, I know, well, I've been left with these tickets. They were €90 each, like face value. But we took them anyway, obviously, because beggars can't be choosers in that situation. But we were in the home side, and we ended up in an Anderlecht like supporters bar with strips like that all round like a Beards affair. And like they eventually realised we were Celtic fans. We didn't have our colours brazenly on display, but they ended up chatting to us, and one of them was like, "Oh, get them this shot," So we got a shot from behind the bar, and they were really sound. There was no animosity or anything like that, and I don't recall hearing any bother. But apparently, again, from another one of those accounts with Union Jacks and Israel flags in the title, we apparently, I say we, an element of the support have apparently ran away last night from an organised fight, which sounds to me like made up nonsense. I don't really see that being a thing that happened. I mean, do you know of anything like that happens? I mean, it seems a bit weird.
That I do know, or my daughter knows somebody who's in the Onion Bears, and yes, it is a thing.
That still happens.
They do organise meets out with football time for.
I mean, you're talking about like young guys, or are you talking about like
young guys?
15,
right, so
16. Not like actual grown men that are doing
15, it like 15, 16 now.
Right. So it's not like the 80s when it's actual people that would rip
no, it's not like the 80s when it's actually like big grizzly 30, 40-year-olds.
Or like Germany, where they meet up with and have like
no, they wouldn't last 5 minutes in a German forest. No, they wouldn't last 30 seconds in a German forest.
Bare knuckle fighting in a German forest, which does, I know for sure, happen. Apparently, you're not allowed to talk about it though, and all the videos on YouTube have all been taken down because it's like the first rule of that is you don't talk about it. So I can't even. It's a nonsense, but I just didn't like them very much last night. I wasn't a huge. We've never played them before. We might never play them again in my lifetime. The way that the format is of this competition now, it's weird how you don't have that reverse fixture. Like we're not going to go to Bruges in a month's time or something like that or Brussels, should I say, to play them, which is weird because like you're so used to that flip of the fixture that you get to play the team away from home as well. But I think the way that you look at the way the format is and where we are in that table, I mean, I know it sounds like we're far down now because we're 20th, but we're above like PSG. We're above, we're above PSG and
Real Madrid.
I mean, that's wild. And we're not on the same points as Man City as well. And I know
we are, and I think there's an unpredictability about this, and I think the managers have spoke about it. I think the Brugge manager spoke about it last night. There's an unpredictability that the fact is you haven't got that return game, and so I think us in the middle, the middle group in this are having a puncher's chance to taking something off the big boys, and I think you've seen that. I think you have seen that in the results. When you go back to last night, I mean, let's have a look at the positives, and there was positives in the second half, but there's been positives over this whole campaign. As so far we've played 3 home games and we're undefeated at home. We've won 2, drew 1. You would have bit your hand off with that because our European record at home's been absolutely terrible for the last couple of years.
I've got it right in front of me, Kev, because I wanted to actually know when the last time we went this sort of run of not being beat at home, and you got to go back to 2012, 2013. Right. We drew with Benfica, we beat Barcelona inexplicably, and we beat Spartak Moscow. So we won 2 and drew 1 in that group. But then prior to that, we beat Villarreal. Admittedly, 4 seasons prior to that, because that was the last time we were in the Champions League. Before that, we beat Villarreal, drew with Man United, drew with Aalborg, and then season prior to that, we beat Milan, Benfica, and Shakhtar at home. So the losses sort of started round about after, like, going into sort of Ronny Deila time. And in fact, Ronny Deila didn't get us into the Champions League, did he? I don't think he did.
No, he didn't. No, he failed every time.
So our losses really started when we started getting drawn in Rodgers' second season. Although we got beat off Mönchengladbach at home, didn't we?
Yes, they absolutely destroyed us that night. They played us off the park that night. They were superb.
1-0, and then obviously the PSG's hammerings and the Barcelona hammerings, and that was the huge gulf that we just couldn't bridge. That gap. It was far too big. I mean, they had like Neymar and Cavani and all those guys were just having a field day against us, which you would expect them to, I suppose. But then you go back to the O'Neill time, and we went on that run of Porto, Rosenborg, Juve, Lyon, Anderlecht, and then Bayern Munich was the draw at home, the 0-0 draw. I remember that night. And then the first loss, you'll remember it. He's in Glasgow tonight. Henrik Larsson.
Aye.
That was our first Champions League home defeat. And
I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have thought if somebody would have asked me, I says, no, I would have got beat before that game. But you go.
I just went back and looked through our European campaigns just to try and piece it together because I was interested to. I mean, I was at all of those. That was my first years as a season ticket holder.
I knew like an unbeaten, won 4 games unbeaten, we would have to go back to O'Neill or Stratton for that to actually happen. But at the start of this campaign, I was going like that. Let's make Celtic Park a hard place to come again, a place where you're not going to get it easy. And in the 3 games, we've done that. Yes, we've had spells, and we had that 45-minute spell last night. But the fact of the matter is, we went a goal down and came back. And in the second half, we didn't make it easy for them. They could have, they had the goal that chopped off. But towards the end of the game, we looked more lightly. And it's a resilience that we're shown. And that resilience at home. And I'm looking at the next game against Young Boys, who are bottom of the league table with 0 points, probably no chance of qualifying by the time they come to Celtic Park. I'm going, if we beat Young Boys, then we've went through a Champions League group, a Champions League qualifying stage, unbeaten at home. That is a massive,
sign of progression.
It's a sign of progression for me, and even last night was a sign of progression for me, because I think we learned more about that team last night in the second half than what we did against the result against Leipzig, because we showed resilience. There was a whole load of players last night for me gave 5, 6 out of 10s, and usually when we do that in Europe, we get pumped basically, and that didn't happen last night. That didn't happen last night at all.
No, that's totally valid, I think, because if you usually say that if 1 or 2 of your players are off it in a game like that, then you're invariably going to get punished. As I thought their second goal was going to be that punishment. I didn't see that being overturned, even though their fans were in the middle of singing, "You only sing when you're winning," and I'm like, we've not been winning in this game at all, so doesn't it make sense? But that got me really angry. I don't know if it was just the several shandies that I'd had before the game that contributed to that. But no, I thought that second goal might be that punishment because, like you say, there was players up, that were way below par. Hatate being one of them. I mean, he was so lackadaisical last night, so wasteful with the ball. I mean, obviously the Ingles thing is continuing to be a discussion and a topic for debate because of the transfer fee and because he's starting in Champions League games. But I genuinely just think back to Matt O'Reilly's first season, and Matt O'Reilly wasn't the all singing, all dancing Matt O'Reilly that we sold to Brighton for 25 million in his first season. There was Aaron Moy became a legitimate argument to be included and won a place in the midfield over Matt O'Reilly. Paulo Bernardo could do exactly the same thing. Does that mean that Arne Engels is a busted flush and he's not good enough? I don't think so. It just means he needs to work harder and pick up more of the advice that he's been given, I'm sure, by the coaching staff to make him a better player, just like Matt O'Reilly became a better player as well, because he's still young. And as we were talking about last night at half time, it's like he's gone from being a guy that has got no real pressure on him to suddenly being a guy that everyone looks to in front of 60,000 people in a Champions League game. Like Augsburg weren't playing Champions League football, do you know?
No.
So there's got to be a level of understanding instead of just being like, I mean, some of the shouts you hear are just absolutely ridiculous, like, oh, get rid of him and all this sort of stuff and bin him, and just no compassion at all for the human being. Because I think he will come good, and I don't think that's blind optimism. I've seen enough of him to know that the guy's got what it takes. It's just about getting that mentality right. Like, look at Kuhn last season. Everyone thought we're writing off Kuhn last season, and the guy. I mean, fair enough. Kuhn was not great last night either. The
only two guys that got past marks for me were Schmeichel and Trusty. Trusty was absolutely phenomenal last night, but I'll give every one of the other guys credit because we didn't fold. We didn't fold like a cheap deck chair up the locals. We didn't fold at all. We actually stayed there, and we stayed in that game, and we eventually got a point. We go back to the Villa. I go back to that Villa game when Villa lost that penalty kick. They completely chucked it. They just went and that's their mentality. We didn't have that mentality. We didn't have that mentality last night. With Engels, that's his first poor game in the Champions League. That's his first poor game in the Champions League. What I think, and me and you are probably more grounded in reality than maybe a lot of the younger generation here. I think what last night showed is just how far that we've got to go, but how far that we've come. What I liked about Bruges was their physicality, and I think we're lacking that in certain areas. But that's not telling us anything new, JP.
No,
we knew that.
We definitely knew that, and they were all. Your man at right back for them was very, very good. He was the out ball every single time. He was constantly in space, did a lot of running. But I was just thinking, I was talking to my mate on Tuesday as a St Mirren fan who obviously ended Aberdeen's league. I can't even speak. They ended their unbeaten run in the league by beating them in the weekend, and I said to Smiley, I was like, fair play to you for doing it. I was like, well, did they play badly? And he was like, no, really, no, they weren't like absolutely terrible and off it. We were just really, really good. And then I said to him, I was like, imagine the mentality that you have to have when you're not used to it, to just keep going and like oh, we've got to do this again. Like Wednesday, Saturday. You've just got to. If you're on that unbeaten run, you're like, we need to protect this. We can't get beaten.
You get a target on your back. You become a beatable side.
Yeah,
and that is the mentality that you need to actually keep on going.
And you know that if you make a mistake, the other team want to be that team to beat you, like St Mirren did at the weekend. And I just think that there's a few players in the Celtic team that have still to get that like properly drilled into them, I think. Whereby it's like, yeah, you need to go again. We need to go again on Saturday. There's there'll be a lot of tired legs today, I'm sure, after last night, because you don't get a point in the Champions League against a team like that if you've not put the effort in. And we definitely put the effort in the second half. But it's interesting that Rodgers kind of said we wasted the first half, because it does feel like we did. We didn't. The momentum never whipped up to the point that the place was properly rocking. And I think that it works both ways. Like, there's people moaning on Twitter this morning being like, oh, I think it's time we need to talk about the atmosphere at Celtic Park. And it's like, no.
Folk just like a knee-jerk reaction, eh? They're just like an utter knee-jerk. And I think last night, again, we're not going into it as underdogs, and people, because it's a game between two Europa League level sides, let's not beat about the bush, it is. And when the fixtures came out, you're looking at it, like, this one we should be aiming to get 3 points for. We didn't. But you play the game that's in front of you. You play that game and get in front of you. I'm over the moon with a point at 90 minutes. I'm going, I'll take that every day of the week.
100%, yeah. Because, I mean, ultimately, the one thing that we wanted was a sign of progression in the last, you think about where we came from the sort of, well, actually, no, like the season, I know that we obviously got put out of Ferencvaros in the Champions League qualifiers, which put us back into the Europa League. But, I mean, our Europa League campaign wasn't terrible the season before the pandemic, you know, and beating Lazio home and away, topping the group and everything else. But the way that the season went in that pandemic season, you just thought we were a million miles away from ever doing anything in Europe again. And then just gradually over the last 3-4 years, thanks to Ange Postecoglou and that rebuild and him bringing in the likes of Kyogo, Hatate Maeda and others, has like actually re-established us as not a force, but certainly not a laughingstock, and not the kind of the way that it started to become in terms of routine games at home where defeats, it might not have been absolute hammerings, but getting beat at home. Like last season we got beat at home off Lazio. That's what that game reminded me of last night, was the Lazio game last season. And the important thing that would have probably been drilled into them was, don't let this be a Lazio like last season. We know what happened there. They didn't deserve to win that game, but they won it. And we got beat at home off a Lazio side that weren't really that great. And that was what that threatened to become last night. And I'm just like you, I'm really relieved that it didn't. And we got another point in the board, which gives us a springboard into the next game. I know Zagreb won't be easy by any stretch. Away games in Europe never really are, and we've not got a decorated past of winning away from home in Europe. I mean, our record's terrible, but that would be a huge result if we were to get anything over there, come back with a point, and then win against Young Boys at home. How are we not going to be happy with that?
Well, longer term, and I think last night is an indication of where we've still got to go. Is you're playing teams in the, I think it's getting got. I read in the Athletic this morning that they're calling it the middle class, this Champions League stage, and guys like us, Brugge, Zagreb, we're all in the push to get into the playoff round. And there's other clubs who are punching above their weight, sitting at 10 points and that just now as well. Atalanta are fifth. So it makes that point that we've got in Bergamo absolutely fantastic. But I'm looking at the teams where you should say that's a 50-50 game. And Brugge, the game last night was a 50-50 game, right? But eventually you want that to be 60-40 in your favour because it's at home. You want to be confident that your team can turn up. You didn't need to be 8, 9 out of 10s out of the park. You can turn up, play an average game, and it's still 60-40 in your favour and get that result. We're not quite there yet, and last night proved that. But we didn't roll over and die like we've done previously. And now we have to look at Zagreb. Now, if you have a look at Zagreb, away from home after the 9-2 defeat, in the opening game, this Champions League stage, everybody written them off as they were going to be they were going to be bottom of the league. They were going to be the whipping boys of this group. Hasn't happened. They're sitting on 7 points. We're rocking up to Zagreb in 2 weeks' time. They've got 7 points. They're looking to get 10 as well. We've got 7. We've got 7. We're looking to get 10 as well, right? Zagreb after the no, we've got 8. We've got 8. We're looking to get that 11-point mark, right? Zagreb after they play us, I've got Arsenal at the Emirates and AC Milan in Zagreb. So Zagreb are looking at us going like that. That's your chance to get 3 points and to qualify for the next stage for the playoff round. We are going to need to have a Bergamo type performance and a Leipzig performance to get any sort of result at Zagreb, because they're going to come at us. They are going to come at us because they can look at it as if they say they're in the last chance saloon. Bruges last night could look at the exact same when you look at their fixtures coming up. Last night was probably their best chance of getting 3 points, and now it's over to the gods. It's over to the football gods for them, because they've got harder games left. They were in the last chance saloon last night at their only on paper winnable game. And Zagreb, when we play them next, is the last chance saloon, basically.
It's interesting you mentioned about how the eyes of Europe were looking at Zagreb after their mauling. Was it Bayern Munich beat them, wasn't it?
Bayern Munich, aye.
I mean, it was the second game we got hammered 7-1 in Dortmund. So by the same token, probably the rest of Europe who are not privy to how we play or what we've been building or anything like that probably looked at that and went, "Oh, wouldn't they mind getting Celtic at some point if we, if that's the case?" Because or the rest of the competition who we were going to be playing must have looked at that and been like, "Oh well." If they hadn't watched games of us, domestically or whatever else, they'd have been looking at that being like, "Oh well." So we've done well to recover from such a. I mean, it was horrendous. I mean, after that game, I wasn't writing us off, but at the same time, I was just like, "Wow, we're a million miles away from where we want to be."
We didn't play the game in front of us. That was the problem.
No, I know. And it was far too many mistakes and individual errors and a bit of luck on their side as well, but obviously a hell of a lot of skill too. But that to have that in this calendar year, but to also have a couple of victories and a couple of draws in the same competition in the same stage, it gives me a lot of joy as a Celtic supporter of 30 odd years or more, that we're actually progressing and it's not something you don't fear it anymore. There's games where you've been going into Europe in previous years where you're like, "Oh God, we're going to get absolutely hammered last night," and it was the absolute opposite last night where I was trying to stop myself from being caught up into this. "Oh, we're going to win the night," I never ever thought we're going to win. I just felt we were better equipped to take on the opposition than we have been in previous years because you've seen the way that the manager wants the team to play, and it's working in Europe.
And that confidence was right because we didn't lose a game.
Mm-hmm.
The confidence was right that you believed that we could do something, and the game pans out the way it pans out, and you've got to give credit to the side with what you've seen. Yes, we would have loved 3 points. Yes, we would have loved free-flowing football. We never got that, but we got another 90 minutes where we learned a lot about what it's going to take. And Zagreb, of where we are and what it's going to take to get where we want to be. And Zagreb's going to be another test of that, an absolute test of that. But bring it on, because the Zagreb fans and the Bruges fans would have looked at us as well. That's a decent tie for us. The same as what we done. The same as what we done. They would have went, "That's a decent tie for us." And now we're gone, "That's a decent tie for us as well. Let's go there and see what we can do." And if we turn up in Zagreb and leave with at least a point, it's up there with the result in Bergamo. Didn't get me wrong, it is up there with the result in Bergamo.
No, absolutely. And what you said there about Bruges were looking at that as their kind of winnable tie on paper because they've got harder games. And almost like by getting that point and taking 2 points off them last night, that's taken another team out of the equation in the table, really, in terms of our progression, because like you said, they were in and around us as a team looking to do exactly what we are wanting to do. So if you nullify that, if they'd won that last night, that would have had a massive impact on our chances of qualification, probably, because they would leapfrog us in that table and be nearer to the goal that we're trying to achieve, which is a playoff or progression from this group.
I mean, at the start of the Champions League campaign, what I was looking for was a playoff spot. I was actually just looking at finishing 24th, then take whoever you get in the playoff. And obviously the result against Leipzig, there's then folk getting to the top 16, get seeded in that. I'm still looking at finishing 24th. If we finish 24th, that is a success for us. I'm really looking forward to Zagreb because I think we've got the mettle now to go there and give a decent account of ourselves. We need to turn up. We do need to turn up. We need to be better all over the pitch. But we can do it. Whereas before you were going into a lot of these games just writing yourself off, go, we'll see what we can actually do. I love the fact that we've seemed to, apart from Dortmund, in the 3 games since then, the 2 goals that we've lost, we've never lost a quick one straight after it, which was a massive Achilles heel. That hasn't happened in the last 2 games. And Bergamo, I'll argue with anybody that we didn't go out to defend like that in Bergamo. That wasn't the game plan, but we adapted with what was actually happening in the game, and we got away with it. And we're going to need to do that. We're going to need to do that. And what is will be a hostile atmosphere against a club who basically will think that they need to win. It's a must-win home game for them.
For Zagreb, yeah, absolutely.
For Zagreb, aye.
Yeah, I mean, that could also play into our hands as well, because if they're, like you say, throwing everything at us, then it's not going to be what we're used to playing week in, week out, which is teams defending, and having to figure out how to pick that lock. If they leave gaps, I wouldn't want to leave a gap for someone like Nicholas Kuhn, because he'll absolutely. It's not bravado. We've seen him do it time and time again, and we're only at the end of November, and he's already posted numbers that would be more than acceptable for a winger at the end of the season. So, and he's also done it in Europe as well. So we know that it's not just a guy that can do it, on a Saturday afternoon somewhere. He can do it at this level as well. And last night wasn't his best game, wasn't a lot of people's best games, but that can happen. There's no way that you should be making judgments on players based on last night. I just think that, obviously there's been knives out for Engels, knives out for Hatate, Taylor. You say Trusty was the best man in the park. Eddie behind me was giving him pelters. This is an Aloha man, by the way. Eddie McAllister. He was not a fan of Austin Trusty last night, or indeed, I don't think Austin Trusty at all, which is strange. But
want to know what makes Austin Trusty perfect for that level? His speed and physicality.
Well, it says a lot about Austin Trusty that he's getting a start ahead of Liam Scales, who, to my mind, has been excellent for Celtic.
Why is he getting a start in front of Liam Scales? Is because he's speed and physicality at that level.
Yeah,
it's nothing that Scales has done.
Exactly, Scales hasn't merited being dropped out, but I guess it's just the harsh reality of he pays $6 million for somebody who is probably a better football player than Liam Scales. There's no. If Liam Scales was to be sold tomorrow, he's not going for $6 million, is he? I doubt that.
He's going for 25.
I don't know, but it seemed inevitable that Trusty would get in at some point and probably keep his place. He's a left-sided centre back. He's the same nationality as Carter Vickers. Not that makes a difference, but I don't know. There seems to be something that makes sense about the two of them as the centre half pairing. And like somebody else said, the one thing that we were saying, I don't know if it was on here or what, but the one thing that everyone's saying last season was like, oh, we need an upgrade on Scales for Europe. Well, this is it. This is it.
And there's loads of areas where we can upgrade enough. And there was certain times last night where our known weaknesses were shown up again and again. It was shown up with the physicality and athleticism against the players that were actually playing. And there will be points in Zagreb in 2 weeks' time where that lack of physicality will get shown up again, but that needs to be addressed going forward. There's no point moaning about it. We know about it. We just got to hope it doesn't cost us. Rome wasn't built in a day, if you want that cliche. M. Young comes in. On the highlights last night, it looked like only Dortmund fans at Zagreb was part of the stadium closed. I think the only open behind the stand across from the telly gantry is always closed because it was damaged in an earthquake, I think. So it looks like there's nobody there, but they're all behind the goals.
I've never been to Croatia. It's a place I've never been. I've always kind of wanted to go. These away trips have all just fallen at the wrong time for me this year. I normally try to go to one, but Aston Villa is probably the most realistic, and then again try to get a ticket for that, absolute almost impossible. I would say, because they'll give us what 3,000 if we're lucky, and there's going to be such a. I mean, I think there's already about 30,000 people going down to Birmingham for that because of all the events that have been laid on. There's like sort of bands playing and all sorts of stuff going on around about the game just because of the Irish diaspora that are there. There's already loads of Celtic fans in Birmingham, I'm sure. Never mind the thousands that are going to come from Glasgow and Ireland and beyond. So, but yeah, I just hope we don't freeze over there, literally, because it will be Baltic, I would imagine.
I think the last time we were there was under Dyla, was it not? Did we not play Zagreb in the Europa League under Dyla? And is that when the last Christmas song started?
Oh, maybe. I've kind of the European results under Dyla were so kind of mostly forgettable. They're not seared into my memory as much as others, because I think if you were to actually pour through the European results, they were just mostly forgettable, weren't they? There wasn't any. Can you name any big results in that time that we got? It doesn't feel like we did.
Did we not draw 1-1 with Red Bull Salzburg when what was his name scored a screamer in a tartan top the day of the independence referendum?
That was also Paul's wedding.
Aye.
Yeah, I think if that memory serves me correct. But no, I don't recall. I remember us playing Croatia Zagreb when Marko Viduka was their striker.
Marko Viduka, aye. Prosinecki played as well.
Prosinecki smoked about like 40 fags a day or something, and he was still absolutely running the show in midfield. He was unbelievable, that player. But yeah, we played Croatia Zagreb in the Champions League qualifiers with Venglos, didn't we? And then we obviously lost and dropped. I don't know if you know if we dropped down to UEFA Cup that season. I can't remember.
I can't remember that. All just merges into one.
I just remember Marko Viduka and thinking he was pretty good, and then the next thing we'd been linked with him and we signed him, which was kind of unheard of at that point. I mean, we spent quite a bit of money on him, did we not? We spent about
6 million.
No, it wasn't as much as that, was it?
We spent 6. No, well, or was it 3.5? Was it 3.5 on Viduka?
It's 3.5, but even
3.5 and we sold him for 6.
3.5 million for us to spend at that time was a lot of dough, I think, because we never used to spend money like that. There was only one team spending money like that, and we know why. I need to look that up.
Aye, I think it was 3.5 now I come to think about it. Then he disappeared right away as soon as we actually signed him. Jungle Lion actually broke with tradition and didn't bring Jungle Lion up first. If Leipzig and the Bruges games were reversed, we'd all be buzzing. I think that's fair enough. If somebody says that the Leipzig and the Bruges games at home, you're going to get 4 points, you would have bitted somebody's hand off for it.
Definitely.
And so that's a very, very good point. P. McLaughlin comes in as well. Games like last night, you need 8 or 9 players on it, not off it.
Which makes the point even more valuable.
Even more valuable. And Jai, it's not a good point against Belgian opposition at home. They played well, we didn't. No, it's not a good point for me. It's an absolutely great point. Just with what you actually say there, they played well, we didn't for the first half, played better in the second half. And I hope David Harvey's enjoying his day. PJ, you're badly missed when you're not on Get These Clowns Off. I hope you're having a nice day, David, and away put the heating on and go under a blanket or something like that. You think what about Rodgers' subs last night? I think the subs actually made a massive influence in us taking control of the game in the last half hour. I think the goal helped as well. The goal shifted momentum. But Baye, I thought, pushing up on their fullback, done really well. Dropping deeper as well, done well. And they couldn't handle Maeda's press. They couldn't really handle Maeda's press. I think Rodgers done well with the subs last night. I think he deserves credit for the wee tactical changes and the subs that he brought on. And even bringing on James, it gave us more control doing that left-hand side when they brought on James as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get the frustration at the fact that we didn't win and everything else, but we've got no divine right to win Champions League home games. That is definitely a thing of the past, although I would like to think it's something that we can build towards, where if in 2-3 years' time we play a game like that and we are really disappointed, but I think we're still in a process of building towards that. Like you've got to learn to walk before you run, and we are not ready to just press fast forward to become this, dominant Champions League, team that nobody wants to face at Celtic Park. We're eking our way towards that again. But as I read out to you, it's been 10 years since we've done it.
Wakaso, that was the boy that scored the goal.
Barek Wakaso, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just expect, but like you said, the second half. If the second half had been the same as the first half and we'd still got a point, I don't think we would be speaking in the same way about the game. Do you know what I mean? If we'd have we would have probably fluked it. But the fact is that the effort that we put into that second half stopped them playing and stopped them getting a second goal. Or admittedly, they did get a second goal. And by the way, I haven't seen that back. What
He's
happened?
offside. He's offside. He's coming back for an offside position. Right. The majority, the line shows that it's his leg, but the majority of his body is offside. Mm-hmm. It is offside. In the commentary, they called it right away. This is he's offside.
Oh, they did.
So, they called it right away. So
it just seemed to me like where I sit, I'm in the north stand, lower, almost at the corner flag, at the other side of the ground. So at my vantage point of that it just looked like a stramash in the box, and then suddenly it was in.
He came back for an offside position, and when the ball came to him, he was offside. It doesn't matter if he's marginally offside. The rules are the rules, and he was offside. I think we'll wrap up the European thing, but let's have a wee we're 5 games in, and I think we're in a great position. I really do. I think we're in a great position. I would have took this before. The competition kicked off.
We've got a zero goal difference as well, which admittedly doesn't look great, but we've pulled that goal difference back, because of the Slovan Bratislava game at home versus the Dortmund away game, they almost cancel each other out. So we're not sitting with like a minus 10 goal difference or something because we get tonked off Dortmund, which is, for me, looking at that table, is better reading the optics on it. And could that play into the scenario of how we qualify and how we progress? Does goal difference get taken into consideration, or is it?
I don't know. I haven't looked that level into it yet. I'm just get the points on the board and let's see what it takes us.
Because potentially, I don't know. I didn't look at what was around about us in terms of goal difference, but ours being on 0 stood out to me. So if we're up against a team around like above or below us who have got -5 or something, or -4, yes, go well. There you go.
Yeah, says the goal difference will come into it. I'm happy where we are. I'm happy with the progression in Europe. Yes, we can improve, but I think we're at the start of our journey here, and hopefully we can improve and know where we want to improve. What about Saturday, 3 o'clock, Ross County?
There is a rarity in these times.
I know. Is 3 o'clock a good time on a Saturday for a game of football? If you're going out on a Saturday night?
Of course it is. The only thing about the game on Saturday just passed, which was hugely enjoyable, by the way, I watched it in a pub in Callander and met Pat Bonner's cousin from Donegal randomly at the bar, as you do. But the only thing annoying about that was, had I been able to get a ticket for that game, which, as we saw, was impossible. I mean, we got 576 tickets or something like that. my old supporters club, the Heriot Watt, for the first time in 32 years, didn't get one ticket. I mean, that's appalling. As far as I'm concerned, that's appalling. I know we moan about the tickets and people go, "Oh, dry your eyes, you're entitled," and all that nonsense. That's appalling. To have that little an allocation for a game on a Saturday night at Tynecastle when they've no filled their ground, clearly, is just embarrassing. But had I been going to that game, I would have been leaving to go to Edinburgh sort of late afternoon, not getting back till late at night. I as a travelling supporter, I'm not really on board with that. It's all very well and good for the TV and everything else, but I prefer a 3 o'clock on a Saturday, especially at home. It's a short bus journey for me to get there.
I didn't think the kick-off times are the problem. I think the lack of tickets are the problem, and I says that on Monday.
Yeah.
Saturday, 3 o'clock, Ross County. I fully expect changes. Because you're having a look, we've got Aberdeen on Wednesday night, and that's the 4th. I fully expect changes. I expect to see a bit of rotation in midfield. I also expect the 2 fullbacks to get changed. And I expect Ida and Forrest to start. I think there'll be a fair bit of rotation when you actually have a look at the number of games that we've got coming up, especially with Aberdeen on the Wednesday night as well. Again, I'm quite happy with Bernardo coming in and McCowan coming in. I do think the midfield, some of them need a wee arm round about them, some of them need a wee bit of a rest. I think Baye is going to need games, and Alistair Johnson as well, international duty, injuries and stuff like that as well, and Tony Ralston will come in. You can't argue with any changes that the manager's going to make, because you have to prioritise games. And if you're a squad player for Celtic, we should, and this is no arrogance, we should have enough to actually beat Ross County at home.
I mean, yeah, of course they shouldn't pose a huge obstacle, but we know that there's been home games in the past where sometimes things don't go for you and they can get to half time at 0-0 or whatever, and then suddenly they've got 45 minutes to hold on. Those games happen. We just have to obviously start with the intensity that we know what we've got. I do agree with you that there'll be changes, but I don't know about like both. I mean, yeah, Baye coming in seems to be fine. I think Ralston coming in as well would probably be okay. What about your centre half? So, I mean, Scales probably comes back in potentially over Trusty.
No, I think Scales will come in for Carter Vickers.
All right, okay.
I think Carter Vickers could maybe. He's played an awful lot of football, so they have to manage Vickers with his injury problems. So I can see Scales coming back in for that. I think Bernardo will definitely get a start, and I don't think we can actually argue with that.
No.
And I can see Forrest coming in as well. I had a look at these run of fixtures in December, and the games against Ross County and Hibs were really the only 2 that I looked at where he could make a level of Dundee change. I remember we played Dundee in that midweek game, and he made 6 or 7 changes.
Yeah.
And if he's going to do that again, I was looking at the Ross County and the Hibs game as the games that will be able to do that. And the amount of work that we put in last night, I think you could see another wholesale changes like we did against Dundee.
Yeah, that was the Dundee one, the one where he kind of admitted that he'd got away with it a bit in terms of the changes, just like the Falkirk game, I guess. Cup. Yeah, I'm obviously wary of, but it's starting to feel like the more people that you bring in, it doesn't feel as crazy that these people are coming in. And if you look at the Aberdeen semi-final, the players that we brought on in the second half in that game were Scales, Taylor and Bernardo, who you would have absolutely been happy had they started that game. So it's getting to the point, you want it to get to the point where the levels aren't dropping dramatically when you do have to change it up. And I think that's obviously Rodgers' plan and hope and aim, is to make sure that when you get to a point like this game on Saturday, it's not a case of everybody looks like they've just met in the dressing room before they come out, because there has been games in the past where you change it about to that point and it does look exactly like that. Like, folk don't know each other's names or nicknames, and there's language barriers and all that sort of stuff. So you want it to be the case that if there is, 3, 4, 5 changes on Saturday, say, that they are seamless. And I think McCowan, if he was to come in, would be one that you wouldn't be worried about. Likewise, Forrest. Likewise, Ralston as well. I mean, these guys, they should be ready for games like this. That's why they're here, and that's why they're getting a salary. you need to be ready to play. You might not play every week, you might not start every week, but you need to be ready to come in and play in these games, because these games are just as important. Might not be a glamour tie at home to Ross County on a Saturday, but it's 3 points that we need nonetheless. And yeah, okay, Aberdeen dropped points the other night at Easter Road. They dropped points at St Mirren at the weekend. Forget about that. We just need to concentrate on what we do and put as much distance between us and them as we can.
That's what we're looking to do. I take it you're talking about Aberdeen there when you're mentioning us, and when you were mentioning them, actually.
Oh yeah.
Talking about Aberdeen there. I think any of the 3 centre halves, any pairing I'm quite happy with, and any of the 3 out of the 5 midfielders we've got, I'm quite happy with. I trust Rodgers. I think we've gave James an extension to the contract for a reason, and it's games like this. It is games like this. Ida up front is not going to worry me, but these guys are all going to be on the bench. So if it is going Pete Tong or we're struggling, they do come on. It's just giving them that break. It's not giving them the 90 minutes. It's maybe giving them 30 minutes. It's maybe getting them 20 minutes. It's just giving them that break. I think, an hour and 2 minutes in, 1100 strong. How good was Dyson's goal?
David Harvey, I'm sure he's
he's probably left now. Eh? He's probably watching the Rangers rabble or something like that. How good was Dyson's goal? We haven't spoke about Dyson's goal. We need to speak about Dyson's goal. The wee turn and the curl into the back post. Absolutely fantastic.
3 champions.
Dyson's been immense for us this season. It has been.
He's been immense for us since he signed. Like, I've never, ever been able to understand why anybody could have issues with Dyson Maeda, because, yeah, okay, he shanks crosses from time to time and they go way out the park, and nobody's probably more disappointed about them than him. But if that is his kryptonite, then the rest of the stuff that he brings to the table is, I mean, sorry to use another Superman analogy, but he is otherworldly in terms of his efforts and his energy, and he's just, to get a goal. I think Postecoglou always used to say when Dyson Maeda got a goal, it would be like, that's his rewards for all the times that he doesn't get one. Like, because he's always getting in the positions, he's always putting the effort in, and he could go a game where he's put in loads of effort. We've probably scored a goal or 2, and neither of them have come via him, but he's caused mayhem in that team to allow other people to score. But then when he gets that goal, that's his reward for his constant pressure, constant input into games. And I genuinely, he was the one player that I was really worried that Ange Postecoglou was going to come back for, just to have as a weapon off the bench at Spurs. And people laughed at that when I said that, and they were like, right, he's never going to get a game done there. He probably wouldn't start, but why would you not want to have someone like him to come on and affect games in the way that he does? Just to introduce chaos to a game, just to introduce absolute like madball, because that's what it is.
I like the fact that he's not perfect. I like the fact that sometimes you do not know what you're going to get, and that surprises the opposition as well. he's probably a cult player, ain't he? He is probably one of the cult players. I think he's been fantastic. I think he's been fantastic for us this season, and his goal last night typified him. But then again, you go back to the game.
That was beating Mignolet, who's not an average keeper. That wasn't against some, no mark of a keeper. That was a top quality keeper that he put it past.
Definitely.
And it needed something like that last night. It needed some. That as well as I do that game could have petered out at 1-0 to them.
It could have done, aye. We needed that wee bit of a moment of individual brilliance, and we got it for Dyson.
Yeah.
Then again, you look at him at Tynecastle, and you knew after 15 minutes that he was going to have one of those nights where he was just going to charge into the back of folk, and the ball was going to bounce off him. But hey, you take the rough and the smooth with Dyson, and I love him for it. What I really, really loved about it, and I think for me, this is what sums up where we are as a side. Dyson scores an absolutely worldy goal, doesn't celebrate, goes back to the halfway line because we want to win that game. And you look at the team, there was no mad celebration. There was no mad celebration at all by the team because we knew that we wanted to go and win that game. And for me, that is a sign of the mentality of that team, and we've got to love that. We cannot ever let that go. Like, even though we had equalised in a Champions League game, we wanted more.
I bet you Brendan Rodgers would love that as well. I bet that's what he'd want to see. May not ever publicly say it, but you do know that he's the type of guy that would want that kind of right back to the halfway line, ball on the deck, let's go again.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And that's where we are, and that's why we love this version of Celtic that we're actually seeing at the moment. JP, it's been absolutely magnificent. Thank you to all 1,172 of you, apart from David Harvey. Remember, see you all later, and dinna be bams to each other, eh? Hail, hail.